You think Billy the Kid was tough? A wild-eyed outlaw with a quick temper and a quicker trigger finger? You think Jesse James was the fastest draw? Think again. These men were legends, sure, but they weren't the most feared. The real deadliest gun in the West belonged to a man you've probably never heard of. A man whose name was spoken in hushed tones, if at all. A man who roamed from dusty saloons to sun-baked canyons, leaving a trail of blood and whispers in his wake. His name? Clay Allison? A ghost in broad daylight? Clay Allison wasn't a glamorous outlaw. He didn't crave fame or fortune. He didn't need a gang or a cause. He wasn't robbing trains or making grand escapes. He was a man of the land, a rancher with a restless soul and a deadly aim. He was a cattle rancher, a gambler, a man who lived by a code as harsh as the New Mexico sun. Honor meant everything, until it didn't. But cross him, and you'd meet a swift and merciless end. He didn't hesitate, he didn't miss. They say he killed over 20 men, some say more. No trial, no mercy, just the sound of a gunshot and silence. And he did it all with a chilling calmness that made him a legend, not in dime novels, but in the eyes of those who survived him. Clay Allison wasn't born bad. He was born into a war-torn world, raised on a Tennessee farm as the Civil War raged around him. Maybe that's where the darkness started, in the shadow of that conflict. After the war, the Allison family drifted west, seeking a new life. They found it in the untamed lands of New Mexico, a place where the law was as scarce as water in the desert. The West changed Clay. It hardened him, made him a skilled horseman and a crack shot. He took to ranching, but the violence of the times followed him. Cattle rustling, range wars, saloon brawls. Death was a constant companion, and Clay Allison, with his piercing blue eyes and hair-trigger temper, wasn't afraid to meet it head-on. One story tells of a mining camp, a poker game gone wrong. Clay was winning, as usual, but a sore loser accused him of cheating. The man went for his gun. It was a mistake he wouldn't live to regret. Clay's draw was faster. The loser slumped to the floor, another victim of the West's brutal justice. But Clay wasn't done. He calmly picked up the dead man's hand, revealing a telltale ace up his sleeve. He was cheating, Clay announced to the stunned onlookers, but he should have played his cards better. It was a chilling display of cold-blooded justice, one that cemented his reputation as a man not to be trifled with. Word of Clay's ruthlessness spread. In Dodge City, a town notorious for its lawlessness, even the toughest cowboys spoke his name with a mix of fear and, well, grudging respect. One hot summer day, Clay rode into town. What started as a simple argument in a crowded saloon escalated with terrifying speed. Shots rang out. When the dust settled, 3 men lay dead, their blood staining the wooden floorboards. Clay, as always, walked away unscathed. The lawmen of Dodge City, used to turning a blind eye to such matters, knew they couldn't ignore this. But Clay was gone before they could pin a badge on him, vanished into the vast expanse of the West. Not everyone feared Clay Allison. Some respected him, others simply tried to stay out of his way. He was a man of contradictions, charming one moment, deadly the next. Some admired his deadly skills and independent spirit. He lived by his own code, one that didn't always align with the law, but often made more sense out on the frontier. He even wore a badge for a time, serving as a deputy sheriff in Colfax County. It was a brief chapter, but one that showed he wasn't entirely opposed to order, so long as he was the one defining it. But a lawman's life was too restrictive for a man like Clay. The rules, the politics, the expectations, they all clashed with his wild nature. He yearned for the freedom of the open range, where a man could ride as far as the horizon and answer to no one. The thrill of the gamble called to him. Cards, dice, and the unpredictable nature of life itself. And the ever-present danger that clung to him like gunsmoke. It was more than a risk. It was a way of life. One story tells of a drunken brawl that spiraled out of control, fists flying, tempers flaring. A lawman, driven by vengeance for a fallen friend, came looking for Clay. He wasn't just enforcing the law, he was settling a score. Clay, never one to back down from a fight, met the man in the street. The air was thick with tension, the kind that only ends in gunfire. Guns blazed, echoing through the dusty town like thunder rolling across the plains. When the smoke cleared, the vengeful lawman lay dead, his badge glinting in the dirt beside him. Another notch on Clay's gun, another chapter in a legend written in lead and blood. It was a stark reminder that even with a badge, Clay Allison was a force to be reckoned with. untamed, unpredictable, and unforgettable. As the years passed, Clay Allison's legend grew. Stories of his exploits spread like wildfire, each retelling adding to his mystique. He was said to have killed over 20 men, some in self-defense, others in cold blood. Some whispered he was possessed by a demon, his blue eyes burning with an unnatural light. But here's the surprise. Despite his fearsome reputation, there's no real proof Clay Allison ever killed anyone in cold blood. Many of the shootings attributed to him were likely cases of self-defense, common in the lawless West. And while he lived a violent life, he was also known for acts of kindness, helping settlers and defending those in need. The truth, as always, is more complex than the legend. In the end, Clay Allison's death was as sudden and unexpected as his life. A man who had survived countless gunfights, barroom brawls, and brushes with the law, met his fate not in a blaze of glory, but beneath the weight of his own wagon. No epic shootout, no final showdown. Just a quiet, tragic accident on a dusty road in the middle of nowhere. He died in 1887, at the age of 47, when his wagon overturned, crushing him beneath its weight. It was a cruel twist of fate for a man who had danced with death so many times and always walked away. A mundane end for a man who had stared down death so many times. But perhaps that's the irony of the Wild West, where the line between legend and reality is as thin as desert dust. He was buried in a lonely grave in New Mexico, his legend fading into obscurity. No grand funeral, no mournful procession, just the wind, the sand, and a name slowly being forgotten. Today, few remember the name Clay Allison. His story, once whispered in saloons and around campfires, has nearly vanished from the pages of history. He wasn't a notorious outlaw like Jesse James, or a folk hero like Wyatt Earp. He didn't fit neatly into the roles history likes to assign: villain or hero, lawman or renegade. He was a product of his time, a man shaped by the violence and lawlessness of the Wild West. A gunslinger, a rancher, a man of contradictions, both feared and respected. But his story, shrouded in myth and mystery, reminds us that the real history of the West is often more complex and surprising than the legends we tell. The truth doesn't always come with a clear moral or a clean ending. So why isn't Clay Allison more famous? Maybe because he defied easy categorization. Maybe because his story didn't end with a bang, but with a whisper. Maybe some stories are just too wild, too brutal, too real for the history books. Stories that don't fit the mold are often the first to be forgotten. Maybe some legends are better left buried in the dust of the past.